This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. When you feel like your best, fam, you can do anything. You can accomplish all those goals in your life, make sure your family's good, and even start, who knows, a mildly successful podcast. Sometimes life gets you bogged down. You might feel overwhelmed. You're not showing up every day the way that you want to. But working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you. Because when you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything that life throws at you. The benefits of therapy are endless. It's great to just check in with somebody who can give you some perspective on life. Make sure that you're meeting all the goals that you set for yourself in life. So whether or not you've been in therapy, now could be the time to give BetterHelp a shot. It's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out their brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Couldn't be easier. If you want an empowered life, therapy can get you there. So visit BetterHelp.com/madaboutmovies today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/madaboutmovies. Ladies and gentlemen, please make yourselves comfortable. I'm Kent Garrison.
And I am Brian Gill.
And this is Mad About
Movies!
Da, 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 da. You sound insane. You realize that? Yeah. The whole world gone crazy! Seriously? It's showtime.
Mad About Movies is an hour-long conversation concerning all things cinematic. First half of the show, we discuss movie news, movie rumors, movie rumblings, and we talk about what's currently going on in Hollywood and what is piquing our interest. And for the second half of the show, we go over one movie, our chosen movie of the week, and give our review. And as an added bonus, please stay tuned to the end of the show for our weekly recommends, in which we discuss something that you need to check out as soon as you possibly can. This week, we're going to focus our efforts on one movie. What is that movie, Brian?
Peter Jackson's adaptation of The Hobbit.
I can't just go running off into the blue. I am a Baggins of Bag End.
Filbo, allow me to introduce Fili, Kili, Oin, Loin, Darlin, Barlin, Biffer, Dory, Ori, and the leader of our company, Thorin Oakenshield.
Or the first part of his adaptation of The Hobbit, which just came out on DVD and Blu-ray this week, so obviously that's timely for us. So,
more specifically, the title, sir?
Oh,
I know there's a lot of Hobbit
An
titles
Unexpected
to
Journey. Yeah.
The Hobbit
An
and
Unexpected Journey.
Great. This one has been out for a while. It just came out on Blu-ray and DVD, so that's the reason we're revisiting it. We've all gotten a chance. I saw it 3 times in the theaters. I don't know how many times you saw it, Brian. And
I think I saw it 3 as well, yeah.
Yeah, so. But it's the one that I have gotten to revisit since it came back out, and lots to talk about. So
yeah.
I know you were looking forward to this one. It might have been your most anticipated of 2012, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about my obsession with The Hobbit.
Right.
Yeah.
But first, is there anything, Brian, that is piquing your interest in the world of cinema lately?
Yeah, well, I think first off the bat, we should talk about our fallen comrade who's not here tonight.
We should address Richard.
He died.
He died. He's
tragic
gone.
diarrhea-related incident.
Don't mix sleeping pills with laxatives.
Yeah,
it's
a bad idea, guys. Richard had to be a grown-up tonight and go to work. So we're hoping he's going to join us later in the show. We'll see. But until then, I think we're probably better off. I would say. Probably get more accomplished in less time without him here throwing in Amanda Peet references.
Yeah, and not just horrible opinions on pretty much everything. I mean, just spitting awful stuff coming out of his mouth. Pretty much every
really
sentence.
Don't respect anything that he has to say on virtually any front.
No, neither did I. He's a horrible friend, too.
Yeah.
So don't tweet him, don't follow him.
Right.
Anyway, he hates stuff. He hates movies that are in the woods.
That's true.
That take place in the woods.
I was looking forward to discussing.
So it was awfully convenient that he chose tonight to not make it.
Yeah. I was really looking forward to bringing up the subject of his fear of the woods during this this podcast.
And that's pretty much that's what he'll talk about. It would be the woods. So we'll leave the woods conversations to the real men.
Maybe we'll do a full podcast on that at some point.
We should. We should do Cabin in the Woods just for him. All right. So yeah, is there anything, Brian, that's piquing your interest in the world of cinema lately? Any blurbs you've seen this week? I know you've been busy too, but
I've been pretty swamped this week. The only thing that I really wanted to bring up was, did you see the news about the Jurassic Park 4 director?
Oh my gosh! Okay, sir, this is the first thing I was going to bring up. No psych. Because
great minds, man.
I knew you were going to be all over this. So go ahead and spill the news. Sure.
Well, Jurassic Park 4 has officially been greenlit. I think that came down a while back, but they just this last week or two, I think, because we took a week off between podcasts, but in the last week or two, they announced that the director of Jurassic Park 4 is going to be Colin Trevorrow. I hope I'm saying that right. Who was the director of last year's Safety Not Guaranteed, which is one of my favorite movies from 2012. And I highly recommend that movie, by the way. I'm not going to take more than a second, but it's on Netflix Instant. You need to check it out if you haven't seen it. It's very fun, very short, real easy to watch, and very enjoyable. So anyway, he's directing Jurassic Park 4, which I think is a great way to go for that franchise. I think it's a great idea to bring in a relatively young / new director who's shown success with the sci-fi genre, and then put him in charge of something that let's say that it needs some young, fresh, new ideas. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, and I wanted to talk about this because I saw the blurb, the news broke that they confirmed a director, and when I saw who it was, I hadn't seen Safety Not Guaranteed, and so at that point, I knew it had just been added to Netflix, watched instantly.
Yep.
I hopped on immediately and watched the movie, and I gotta say, it was a great movie, but I gotta say, I can't picture him doing a Jurassic Park film. It is a very good movie. Great filmmaker. He has great sensibilities. Really cute, great performances. But I mean, this is kind of the furthest thing from Jurassic Park.
You're right.
Which excites me and kind of makes me afraid too.
Sure. Let me make an analogy here. Have you ever seen the movie Moon that came out in 2009?
With Sam Rockwell, yes.
Yes, Sam Rockwell. Okay, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the last, decade or so. I mean, really, really excellent movie, but very small scale. I think that was done on like a nothing budget. And then director Duncan Jones, his second movie was Source Code, which came out, I think, 2011, something like that. And it was still sci-fi, but it was a much different kind of movie, much bigger scale. So I kind of look at it as that, at least as far as what I'm gonna cut him some slack. You know what I mean? I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, at least until we see if it goes poorly or something. But so that's what was on my mind when I saw the news come down that he was going to direct Jurassic Park 4. I mean, obviously that's a big step up from Safety Not Guaranteed, which I'm sure was made for $3 million, maybe $5. Yeah. I mean, it couldn't have been too much more than that. And I would imagine that Jurassic Park 4 will be somewhere between 75 and 150 million, something like that. I mean, just a huge scale. But I like the idea of turning that over to a guy that has shown an ability to make a good, fresh idea movie, and then put him in. To me, it's similar to, like I said, Duncan Jones, and also what's the guy's name? Rupert Wyatt, the guy that did Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah, it's kind of a similar thing there. So I think it's a good idea, and I like. I think it's Universal that has that property. I like Universal saying, instead of going and trying to get either a big name guy like Nolan or goodness, even Spielberg or something like that, or going the route of like Schumacher or Michael Bay or something like that. That's kind of done. I like the concept. I like the idea of giving Trevorrow a chance with a big franchise. The thing to me that's going to be real interesting is to see what the budget ends up being. Is it going to go John Carter route and go 200 or $250 million, or are we going to learn from our mistakes?
We're going to see a. First of all, it's going to be in 3D. So add $50 million to whatever budget you have.
That's true.
To convert or to shoot in 3D.
Yeah.
So I can imagine it probably being $100 to $150 million budget, and the studio being perfectly comfortable with that budget. I would say they would probably even be comfortable with the $200 million budget, knowing the franchises, the popularity of the franchise worldwide, and Spielberg's name attached still to it. I think that's worth $200 million alone. And on the note of the director, I can think of one of two ways that they thought of hiring him. Mm-hmm. Was that when they interviewed him, he had a great vision for what Jurassic Park 4 should be, a great story idea, or something that just blew the executives and Kathleen Kennedy and the producers out of the water.
Yeah.
Or they approached every big director that they wanted, and they all said no, because no big director with a decent name in Hollywood is going to taint their reputation with the fourth Jurassic Park movie.
Right.
Really. So, what do you think happened there?
I would like to believe, I'd like to believe that they thought that the better route would be to go this way, to go with a slightly lesser known director who at least has shown a track record of being able to do good stuff, rather than throwing it at every big name and coming up empty. I hope that's not the case. I don't know if there's even a script out there for this movie yet, but I would hope that they, or at least that this was what the plan, that the plan was to go find a lesser known, but still a guy that knows what he's doing.
An up and comer.
That's a great way to put it. The up and comer, and go that route. So we'll see. This is a great interest to me. I know you're a little bit younger than I am, but Jurassic Park.
Honestly, Brian, before you say anything.
Yeah.
Hook and Jurassic Park are the first movies that I have memories of seeing in the theaters.
Yeah.
A very vivid experience for me to see both of those movies. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, Jurassic Park I think I was 10.
It was my life when I was about 7, I think, 7 or 8. So I was already obsessed with dinosaurs, and so the fact that this movie came out, I was like, what? Yeah. And they were dinosaurs on the screen. I mean, that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. But that movie, we're going to do a review of that when the 3D version comes out. We're going to revisit it. So,
well, that was, just very shortly, that was the most magical moment of my youth as far as movies were concerned. That was
absolutely,
what a huge experience that was for me. And then Lost World is pretty bad, but I watched Lost World recently.
It definitely is bearable. It's definitely not a disaster, but it's definitely not as good as the first. It has its moments. It does.
Sure.
When I first saw it, I was blown away. I thought it was incredible.
Right.
The third or the fourth act, the random 20 minutes Spielberg adds on the end of it just walking through a neighborhood.
Yeah.
I was giddy at that age seeing that.
Yeah.
So
it's not terrible. The third one is really bad.
Great premise. Great premise.
Yes.
Great casting.
I totally agree.
Horrible
terrible
execution.
Script. Yeah, and bad execution. So this is a franchise that really, it needs the fourth one to be really good, because not only is it a reboot, but I think any fans of the original, it's not really a trilogy, but the original 3 movies are going to be skeptical going in, and so you need this one to be good. So I like the idea of giving. If we're going to go down in flames, then I'd rather go down in flames with Colin Trevorrow or Duncan Jones or Rupert White or somebody like that, rather than I keep saying Schumacher. Sorry if Joel Schumacher's listening. I don't mean to keep trashing you, buddy, but you made Batman and Robin, so you kind of deserve it.
He hasn't really done anything since. I don't know, worthwhile.
But you know what I mean. Somebody like that like doesn't really have any sort of youth, any sort of fresh ideas, anything like that. They're just there to kind of.
They think they know what the kids like, but they don't.
Right, right. So if it's gonna burn down and not be awesome, I'd like it to be not awesome with taking a chance with somebody like this,
Or it could be disappointing. It could ruin Trevorrow's career. And,
that's true.
We don't get any more. He doesn't get greenlit for any more good films.
Yeah, but it's kind
of. I would
have
liked to see the Ryan Johnson from Looper direct it.
Yeah, he's so weird though, dude. Like
he has great sensibilities though. He does not release a movie unless it's great.
Well, and I think he's a guy that he's not going to do a movie unless he
comes up with it.
Directed the
I
whole
just
time.
think for what he did with sci-fi in Looper, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
He definitely knows what the kids like. So
and he's a smart guy. This is kind of a win-win though for Trevorrow because he's going to get a big paycheck.
You got a German pronunciation there on Trevor.
Yeah, I know. Killing it. But he's going to get a big paycheck. He's going to get an opportunity to direct a big feature film with a franchise and all that stuff. And if it doesn't work out, then he can just go back to making $5 million movies. I mean, it's not going to – I don't think it's something that – even if this tanks badly, it's not going to ruin his career. It might keep him from making big movies, tentpole movies again. But this is an opportunity to take a chance, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and he'll be back to making smaller movies, in a couple of years, and he'll be all right,
Right. Yeah. Good stuff. I'm glad we got to bring that up. It's gonna be exciting. I'm sure the details are gonna be coming out, plot details and all that, casting,
right.
Really soon. I'm hearing that they're gonna get a lot of the originals maybe back. I know they tried getting Sam Neill, but I hear they're maybe going to try to get Goldblum back.
That would be great. Yeah,
so that would be awesome.
I thought I'd seen that they were.
I thought they were going to get David Attenborough too.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Hopefully.
I thought I'd seen that they were going to maybe start shooting that in like June or something.
Very soon, yeah, very soon this summer.
We should be getting details pretty soon, so that's exciting.
It's a project that's been in development. We should say.
Yeah, Spielberg's wanted to do it forever. So
since the weekend that Jurassic Park 3 came out, it's been in development, and so the fact that it is going to come out is exciting because they always said they're not going to do it unless it was an idea that they could all get behind. And one idea that I should mention that Spielberg has mentioned. In Jurassic Park 1, whenever Wayne Knight's character gets spit by the spitter and he falls down and ultimately gets eaten, but his Jeep is left behind and the Barbasol can is left behind with all the DNA on the island, and it gets covered by mud. Spielberg said the whole reason he did that shot was to set up a sequel, that there's still DNA there. And they never did that in Jurassic Park The Lost World because he ended up going with Michael Crichton's story, where there's a separate island altogether. Right. So who knows? I guarantee you that's the first scene we see in Jurassic Park 4 is somebody discovering that can of Barbasol. And that's going to get me so excited.
Yeah, I'm excited, man.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm with you. And I'm excited about this. I think it's real easy to trash on this because it's, the fourth movie, a sequel that's coming out like 12 years after the last movie came out, and the last movie was terrible. So I think it's real easy to trash on this, but I'm excited, and I'm at least willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and find out a little more about it before I go into trash mode. So,
yep, absolutely. I wanted to mention some news. Comic book news. I know you're into comic books like me. Comic book
movies,
comic book culture, and all that. I got a chance today. It leaked online through some. I don't know if you saw this through some video cameras that people had in theaters, but I got a chance to snag it off the internet. The Edgar Wright Ant-Man preview.
Okay.
The concept footage for Ant-Man.
All right.
So I got a chance to see it, and what it is basically it's like a hallway, and camera zooms up on a vent, and you see a small little Ant-Man, like the size of an ant, jump out from the vent, and basically there's an elevator in this hallway, and basically he fights off 2 security guards and goes in the elevator.
Okay.
But he's transforming his size the whole time, going from small to big, and it looks awesome. Let me just say that. I would greenlight a movie based on the concept footage alone. It is out there. You have to look hard for it. It has been pulled off YouTube. Every link I've seen, it says copyright Disney Corporation.
Right.
So, Brian, I'll send you a copy so you can see it. But Google it if you can. check it out. Ant-Man is coming soon. Edgar Wright is one of my favorite new directors. Hasn't really let me down yet. Really, really excited after I saw this because it's one of those characters that you look on the comic book and you're like, that would never work on screen because that's too cheesy. But I think Christopher Nolan and everyone else has proven that comic books don't have to be cheesy. So thoughts on Ant-Man? Do you know anything about it?
I know very, very little about Ant-Man. He was one of those ancillary characters that I don't...
He does become part of the Avengers. I would say that in the comic books.
And I saw, I don't know, at some point in the recent past, I was hanging out with like a friend's nephew, or something like that, and he was watching like an Avengers cartoon that was on Netflix. Yep. And Ant-Man was a big player.
Yeah, he's on the new Avengers cartoon series called Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, he is, and Wasp, and the girl, the Wasp, is on there too.
So I didn't really grow up reading comics or anything like that. I'm strictly into the comic book movie genre. So, but I knew a little bit just about I know about his presence, but I can't tell you much about his story or his skill or anything. But I'm with you, I really like Edgar Wright a lot, and I think that's the kind of director that I want to be making comic book movies about these sorts of smaller characters. I want Joss Whedon for the Avengers, but I really like the idea of Edgar Wright, or for a while, remember Darren Aronofsky was rumored to do a Wolverine movie, things like that. I like that idea.
I'm glad that they snagged what's his name, James Gunn for Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. That's going to be amazing. Matthew Vaughn, incredible for X-Men. Just good. Zack Snyder, these guys that just. They're gritty, but they're taking on these comic book characters that it's not going to be some cheesy thing with any of these guys. I'm glad that's the trend right now in Hollywood for superheroes.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
I was hoping for a Scott Pilgrim sequel. I guess we're going to have to wait on that for now. So check out the Ant-Man footage if you can Google it. Try to do it ASAP because I'm sure Disney has said they're going to release it eventually. It probably won't be for a while, I would guess.
I'm looking at IMDb right now, and the movie itself is not scheduled to come out until 2015. So they don't have. I don't think they've even cast Ant-Man himself yet. So
no, I don't think they have either.
Way early in the game, the footage that you're talking about.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy is shooting this summer though, in London. And I will be in London this summer, so if you see me in Guardians of the Galaxy, don't be surprised.
All right, just try to get in there as one of the main, not the main character. I mean, but like one of the background characters.
Yeah, Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah, that would really help this podcast a lot, Kent. I feel like
it would, and don't I've been trying to learn all I can about Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not going to lie for the movie. So if you know anyone. Tweet me or email me if you know anyone that can sell me Guardians of the Galaxy 1 through 25, the comic books. I've been searching eBay, and the cheapest I found is like a couple $100 for the 25. So it's very high in demand right now. People all trying to do their research. So get into it. The actual Marvel is rebooting the series, the comic book series, and it's coming out next week, issue number 1. So you still have time to catch up and to get familiar.
Nice.
With it, because it's going to be. I read the first, the kind of preview issue, point 1 that they released last week, and I'm already hooked. Characters just jump off the page. It's a really exciting premise, really exciting storyline. I'm glad Chris Pratt's involved.
Yeah.
James Gunn. It's a can't miss, really. So
good.
Excited. Anything else you want to mention for movie news before we move on to our review, sir?
Man, I don't have anything else. Sorry, I've been out of the movie loop the last couple weeks, so.
Well, we'll save it for another day then.
All right.
Well, let's talk about The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Hey, what's up, Mam Fam? Kent here. And yes, if you're hearing from me, you know it's time to talk about Blue Apron. If you haven't tried out Blue Apron by now, what the heck are you even doing? Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. They deliver fresh meals straight to your door. All the food is fresh. It's sourced from local farms, and there's no wasted ingredients. I've been a Blue Apron subscriber for a long time now, and they have still, to this day, never let me down. There's tons of variety. Some featured upcoming meals include summer vegetable and egg paninis, soy glazed pork and rice cakes, skillet vegetable chili with cheddar drop biscuits, holy crap, and garlic butter shrimp and corn with green bean salad. So take it from me. Try out Blue Apron now. Go to blueapron.com/mad. That's blueapron.com/mad. Get 3 meals on us for free. Nothing goes better with a movie than dinner. So check out Blue Apron, blueapron.com/mad. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Hey, man, fam, question for you. Do you own a small business, or are you a boss? Are you looking to hire awesome people, but you just can't find somebody to fill that role? Well, let me tell you about ZipRecruiter.com. With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100+ job sites, all with one click. In fact, over 80% of jobs posted on ZipRecruiter get a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. Right now, you can post your jobs for free on ZipRecruiter by going to ZipRecruiter.com/mad. That's ZipRecruiter.com/mad. One more time, try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/mad. Thanks to ZipRecruiter for supporting this episode of the Mad About Movies podcast.
You have a tale or two to tell when you come back?
Can you promise that I will come back?
No. And if you do, you will not be the same.
Okay, Brian. Tell me about The Hobbit. Tell me about your anticipation. Just talk to me. Give me your general thoughts about The Hobbit and An Unexpected Journey.
Sure. I grew up with... My dad was a science fiction writer growing up.
Wow.
My parents played... amateur, but he spent a lot of his time writing sci-fi. My parents played Dungeons and Dragons on if not...
So basically you had the best parents.
yeah. I mean, super nerdy upbringing. The first... Until my brother was born... My brother is like 4.5 years younger than I am. Until he was born, we were pretty much at... I mean, like every weekend was at some sort of sci-fi convention or or playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. Just little things like that. So that to say, I was raised on 2 pop culture things, and that was Star Wars and The Hobbit.
Okay.
I have probably read The Hobbit, I would guess 2 or 3 dozen times, maybe.
Wow. I thought you were going to say 2 or 3, and that would be
no.
impressive.
I read The Hobbit a bunch. I own about a dozen different copies of The Hobbit that I picked up over the years. And to take it to a whole nother nerdy level, we had this. It was as an audio play, basically, that was released on BBC Radio back in probably the 60s, maybe the 70s. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. The cartoon
well, I had
version
that.
Or,
yeah. No. It was an audio version. I had the cartoon, of course, like everybody, but it was an audio tape that was on like 4 or 6 tapes or something like that. And we had a Lord of the Rings as well.
I have the Lord of the Rings one. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And I listened to those. Yeah. I listened to those constantly. Like for, I don't know, probably 8 years of my life. Every night I went to, until I discovered sports, I went to bed with listening to The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings. So all that to say, if there's ever been a movie in my life that I have anticipated more than this one, I would say Phantom Menace is probably the only thing that has ever topped The Hobbit as far as just, I cannot wait for this. And,
more than the Avengers?
Oh, by far. I was very excited about the Avengers, but the Avengers was like, again, I really wasn't a comic book guy.
Yeah,
and so, the Avengers was kind of like a new thing. You know, that was an excitement that had been building for like 5 years or maybe 7 years, something like that. You know, The Hobbit. Even I'm 30 years old now, and even at 30, it was like childlike glee. You know, for the like 6 months leading up to The Hobbit, of just it's coming, it's finally going to be here, it's finally going to be here. And so there's no possible way that any movie could ever live up to that sort of anticipation and that sort of hype. Okay. You know,
all right,
there's no possible way.
Kind of a high bar to set.
There's
no way any movie could ever meet.
It's totally unfair and obscene that I was that excited about it. But this really is. I said, okay, when the trailer. This shows you how weird the movie industry is. When the trailer for this first installment of The Hobbit came out in, I want to say March of last year, something like that, I wrote on my blog that the only way that I could be more excited about a movie is if George Lucas announced that he was going to do another trilogy of Star Wars. But that he wasn't going to have anything to do with it. Somebody
the irony, sir.
Yeah. And so, lo and behold, 6 or 8 months later, that exact same thing happened. So, right. But anyway, this is a movie that I look forward to happening since the time I was, 5 years old. You know, I mean, this was sort of a dream come true. And as such, when the opening credits rolled, and we can talk about
let's talk about it.
Yeah, we can. We can talk about the trilogy aspect and the negative parts of this and all this, but when the opening credits started in the movie, when the lights went down, the opening credits roll, it's a midnight showing, I literally sat there with a huge grin on my face and almost was giggling to myself because it was just it's a dream come true in a weird, really lame kind of way, you know?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I saw it at midnight, IMAX 3D actually. Really, really crowded. I actually was with a girlfriend of mine, not my girlfriend, but a girlfriend of mine. And it was so crowded that we didn't even get to sit together. So I sat pretty much by myself.
Nice.
In the movie. And I had just, right before the movie started, I had no idea that it was going to happen, but I just saw the Star Trek Into Darkness 8-minute prologue.
Yeah.
In IMAX 3D, mind you.
Yeah.
And so I almost left the theater because I was like, and we were going to talk about Into Darkness whenever it comes out, but that movie is going to be freaking amazing. My mind was melted at that point. I was like, how is this happening? And so I agree with you. Right when it started, I was so happy. It didn't let me down at the beginning, really, at all. What were your overall impressions of the movie? I know you said you were looking forward to it. So what were your impressions?
Yeah, I've seen it. I think I've talked before. I don't see movies in the theater more than once, or hardly ever. It's just not something that I have time to do. But I did. I saw The Hobbit 3 times because I really wanted to. I was a little disappointed after the first viewing. But again, I really feel that was based entirely on, I've been looking.
The fact that you had read the books.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
25 times.
Yeah, exactly.
It's honestly been 10 years since I read The Hobbit.
Yeah.
So I was going in blind. I would refresh myself.
Right.
On the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I watched the extended edition, I think, 2 days before. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to be honest. I had no cinematic desire whatsoever to return to Middle Earth. At that point, I think I had 12 hours of Lord of the Rings movies. So I thought all of that could be done, had been done there. But I will say that I was surprised, very pleasantly surprised by it.
Good. So I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like a lot of people were kind of crapping on the movie, and I don't get that. I gave it an A. Now, I will say this. I don't think that it's one that – I think the Lord of the Rings movies, anybody or close to anybody could watch it, and even if they don't like it, they could appreciate what's being done with those 3 movies. The Hobbit, I think, is one that is more geared towards the fans of the book and of fantasy in general and the Lord of the Rings series. I don't think it's nearly as universally appealing as the Lord of the Rings movies are. But that said, if you are any sort of a fan of those movies or the books or anything like that, I kind of don't get, if you're a fanboy of The Hobbit, the book, and of the Lord of the Rings movies that Peter Jackson made previously, I kind of don't get how you cannot like.
Yeah, it's literally the same stuff. I mean, it fits perfect with the other trilogy.
Sure.
I don't see how anyone can complain, like you said, if Peter Jackson's in charge. I mean, he hasn't let us down. I mean, his Lord of the Rings trilogy is a masterpiece. There's really no other word to describe that. It's just flawless, really. It's spot on. I mean, every aspect of those films is exactly how you picture it in your head when you're reading the novels. Part of that is because Tolkien is such a descriptive writer. Part of that is because Peter Jackson respects Tolkien's work and is so familiar with New Zealand, and so many things contribute to it.
Well, I would even go so far as to argue that the movies are better than the books are, and I
can agree. I can honestly say that.
That's a rare thing to say.
Definitely for the Lord of the Rings novels.
For those for sure.
For the
not
Hobbit,
the Hobbit.
Since we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. But as far as just this movie goes, and then I'd like to talk about just the whole trilogy aspect and all that stuff. Sure. But as far as this movie goes, I really like it a lot, and I saw it 3 times in the theater.
Let me ask you this.
And watched it yesterday, and I gave it an A when I reviewed it, and I stand by that. I think it's a very good movie. It's not perfect. It's not flawless. It's not a masterpiece like the original trilogy is. But I really enjoy it. From a fan, if you're a fan of the book, if you're a fan of that sort of movie, I don't know how you can't if you can't enjoy it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: where on your Tolkien or Peter Jackson list does it rank? Ranking them with the other movies.
It's definitely fourth. Yeah. But I feel like it's important to say, because of the trilogy aspect of it, I don't feel like you can completely rank or grade this movie until you see the whole thing together. Until all 3 pieces are together. I don't think it's fair to judge it so much based on, you're only getting a third of the story, you know? And so
a very extended version of that story.
Yes. And honestly,
parts of which don't appear in the novels that I know of whatsoever. Right. And you can probably attest to that more than I can. But Azog, the White Orc, I don't believe he was at all in the novels.
No, he wasn't.
I think that was a Peter Jackson fabrication.
Yeah. That's done. I didn't love that part, to be honest with you. I didn't love that aspect, but I anticipate that it's going to be. I anticipate that this is how he's setting up the third film. That he's going to use this a lot later on in the trilogy.
Epic battle or something.
Yes, yeah. Because if you're familiar with the books, there's towards the end of the book, there's what they call the Battle of the Five Armies, and it includes. In the book, it's a goblin army. Right. I anticipate that the White Orc will be the leader of whatever army comes to fight.
Because the Goblin King, no spoiler here, or actually a spoiler alert coming up right now, Goblin King dies in the Hobbit.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The first part of this movie is so tight, so well done. I think it's way better than Fellowship of the Ring as far as setting up the story. The first act, I would say. Like the prologue sequence with the narration, it does a much better job than the first one did.
I would disagree with you, but I don't. I mean, I don't think.
I was more familiar with the Lord of the Rings going into it.
Sure.
And I was more interested at that point. And maybe it was because I was so young, but there were overall, I felt like Fellowship of the Ring was just. It's my fourth on my list.
Okay.
Just because I feel like Peter Jackson, maybe it was his first attempt into Tolkien's world. I can obviously tell now that it was the first one.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it just seems way more polished. He knows how to set up a trilogy. He gives us more visuals this time to explain what had happened to Aragorn, than he did last time. I think it was just a woman narrating last time, just telling about the stuff, and it was less actually showing you it happening. Probably that it has to do a lot with budget.
Yeah.
But I really was engaged at the beginning here. The dinner scene where the dwarfs, I guess, and the other guys meet with Bilbo.
Yeah.
I can say that is classic. That'll go down as one of the classic scenes in cinematic history, I think.
It's
just perfect way to introduce those characters.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. I love Fellowship of the Ring. I think Fellowship of the Ring is my favorite.
I love it too. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying But I know that compared to the other three, it's definitely the most slow. I would agree with that. Sure. You can agree with that, yeah.
Sure. But I do think too, there were a lot of reviews that I read that did not appreciate this setup for this movie either, and felt like it was too slow. I loved it.
Well, Brian, everyone is entitled to their own opinion.
Yeah. No, totally. But I personally, I thought it was great. I'm with you. I thought it was a great setup.
As far as building up the anticipation of Smaug, I think it did a great job.
Yes.
Showing you the dragon, showing you the shadow, the terrorism that he brings. And so you have that to look forward to, you know the goal at that point.
Right.
The whole point of the three movies is going to be take back the city, destroy the dragon. That's it. It's so simple. I love the introducing characters scene. And what I really like about Peter Jackson is the way he takes things that you can only read in Tolkien books, and you might even skim over. Things like the songs.
Yes.
He uses those to great effect, and whenever they're singing Misty Mountain Cold in Bilbo's house, you're just like, wow. And it's just one of those moments where you're like, now I know what Tolkien was doing.
Right. And speaking from, again, having read the book like 25 times or something, that is 100%, that is exactly what I had in my mind. Coming in, which that doesn't hardly ever happen. When especially if you've read a book more than once, if you really love a book and you keep digging further and further into it, and then finally they make a movie, it's almost always a letdown just from the standpoint of, well, that wasn't really what I pictured, but it was, whatever. The introduction of the characters, the dinner scene, and especially moving into the singing before they depart on their journey is straight out of the book, and it's utterly delightful, in my opinion, for anyone, for me,
Tolkien
again,
fans and
for Tolkien fans, yeah. So I love that aspect of it. I do think the two complaints that I had about the movie, one has I've decided that it's not a complaint; it's just something that I had to come to grips with. The Hobbit as a book is much more childlike than the Lord of the Rings books are. Yeah. Has a lot more whimsy to it.
A lot more fun. It's just overall.
It is, and it's a kid's book. The Hobbit is written basically for kids, whereas Lord of the Rings I feel like is written for adults.
I agree with that.
I did the same thing as you. I think I finished watching the extended edition of Return of the King after having watched, all three of the movies, like the day before I went to see it, or maybe the night that I went to see it.
I think I finished Return of the King the afternoon of the midnight premiere.
I think I may have done the same thing. And so the first time I watched it...
And I watched all the production diaries online, which is great. Yeah. We should mention that. Thank you, Peter Jackson, for releasing those.
Absolutely.
For those of you who don't know, he releases like once a month while he's making a movie. He releases about a 10-minute video just showing you behind-the-scenes stuff. And so by the time the movie comes out, you basically have an hour-long documentary about the production of the film without giving away any spoilers or details, plot details. And it was awesome. So thank you, Peter. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I was just going to say, I think it took me – the first time I watched The Hobbit, I was a little disappointed in the tone of the movie. And then after having watched it and thought more about it, it's a different tone. It's a little bit less serious than the Lord of the Rings movies are. And so I think people who, and I'm saying that I was one of these people, were expecting it to be exactly like Lord of the Rings trilogy as far as the tone and the way that everything is presented, and then got a slightly more lighthearted take on everything, I would say, in The Hobbit, and were disappointed by that. That's the book. I mean, there's a difference between those, those two things. And so after I kind of came to grips with that, I was totally fine with that choice. So I would say the only thing that I really was bothered by or disappointed by throughout this movie was I felt like there was an over-reliance on CGI that maybe didn't need to happen. One of the things I love about Lord of the Rings trilogy is that anything that could be done with props and makeup was done with props and makeup. This movie, I felt like the white orc was obviously super CGI. All the other goblins.
And I heard that the white orc was not mocap either. It was strictly CGI, and I think that had something to do with
and I think you can tell
the disconnect there.
Yeah, and I think you can tell it looked a little more like not like a video game. That's not because it wasn't quite to that extreme by any means, but it wasn't as lifelike and real as I feel like the Lord of the Rings trilogy is. And I'm always disappointed when people go, I understand. I have no problem with CGI. I think there's a lot that you can do with CGI that you can't do with props and makeup and whatever else. But it disappoints me a little bit, I guess, every time I see a movie where scenes that I felt like could have been done with in a standard way of filming by actually having an actor there, in makeup or with props, whatever, and it's done in CGI, that disappoints me a little bit. And so I wasn't expecting that coming into this movie because I felt like Peter Jackson made the balance of CGI and human actors perfectly in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it wasn't quite to that same degree of balance this time around. And that kind of disappointed me a little bit.
Yeah, I can agree there. Honestly, my first impressions coming out of the movie was, wow, that was two great scenes. Great scenes meaning the dinner scene and the Bilbo meeting Smeagol.
Riddles in the dark.
Two great scenes mixed with some CGI in between.
Yeah,
that's how I honestly felt.
With that,
there's two scenes that are worth the price of the ticket.
Yeah.
The rest is just stuff that you've seen in all the Lord of the Rings movies. Great CGI, like the first Fellowship of the Ring where they're building the orc army. I mean, you get the same thing here with the goblins. I mean, it's the same underground cave. It's done to a much, much higher scale, and the CGI is way better. Looks more real, but it's just obviously...
it's obviously
you're not
CGI.
Tricking anyone,
Yeah. I would say as they're moving forward, the one thing that I hope Peter Jackson focuses on is making the battle scenes and the fighting more realistic and a little more gritty. To me, that's one of the great parts about the Lord of the Rings trilogy is it takes this fantasy and it's, obviously this isn't actually happening and it's it's set in Middle Earth and all this sort of thing. But the battle scenes in those movies, particularly in Fellowship of the Ring, are hardcore and they are very realistic. In Fellowship, when Boromir, spoiler alert, meets his untimely end, that's one of the most harrowing scenes I've ever been a part of in an action movie or an adventure like that. And I felt like that was definitely lacking in The Hobbit. Like, for instance, when they're breaking out, when the dwarves and Gandalf are breaking out of the Goblin Lair, it's all very CGI-y and kind of not quite comical, but very light. They're swinging swords like ninjas and things like that. I hope that as these movies progress and we get into a little bit more serious fare, that he'll bring back the more serious, the more realistic brand of fighting that we had in the original trilogy. Because I felt like that gave the movies a little more weight than what The Hobbit has, if that makes sense.
I think we're going to get that. Definitely at some point in this trilogy, we're going to get those battle scenes. I don't think Peter Jackson would do this without that, because he knows what the fans like. I think we're going to get that whenever Legolas comes along.
Sure.
Apparently in There and Back Again, the last one, we're going to get Legolas. So lots to look forward to in this trilogy for sure. I like you said, I loved the comedy aspect of this movie. I wish he would have given us more serious stuff, but not to the degree he gave it to us. I mean, he gave us the comedy, but then the serious stuff he gave us, I mean, it's essential to the story, I understand, but the stuff with I'm drawing a blank here, Rivendell.
Yeah.
There's about a 30 or 40 minute scene where it's just Gandalf and the elves talking, and it really is that long, and it just drags bad. I mean, we want serious stuff, and I know that that's probably in the novels, but it came at a bad time for me, and it really slowed things down. But right after that, I mean, we get them leaving. They get the epic score, and then all going on the epic shot of them on top of the mountain from afar. That huge helicopter shot, that signature Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson shot of them going on their journey. The chills just go down your spine when that stuff happens. That's just when the score and the scenery, the cinematography and the story all come together like that is great. And after that, we got some great CGI. We got the scene where they're on the mountain and the rocks are being hurled at them and they're falling off the cliff, and then we get Bilbo meeting Smeagol. Talk to me about that scene, the Gollum scene.
Riddles in the Dark that's hands down, that's my favorite scene of any movie from 2012. And I don't know if it really is that good. I don't know, but from again, super Hobbit nerd in me standpoint, that was an incredible scene, and that is almost line for line out of the book. And there are probably better scenes this year. Storming the compound in Zero Dark 30 is probably a better scene. Maybe the scene in Argo when the guy kind of steps up, the guy who's been cowardly throughout the whole thing steps up and saves their butts. Is pretty great. There's a whole bunch of great scenes in the year. That was my favorite.
The Django Unchained bar scene.
Yeah, that's another great one. Yeah,
they have to go get the sheriff. Make sure you get the sheriff, not the Texas Ranger or whatever.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, those are all good. But Riddles in the Dark was my favorite, and I thought that Jackson hit that perfectly. And I also thought should mention Martin Freeman did an incredible job as Bilbo.
He did.
That's a tough. A character that is that beloved, to bring that to life so many years down the road is really tough, and he did a great job with it. And I thought that it at no point in the movie was he better than in that sequence as he's talking with Gollum and trying to negotiate his way out of the situation without getting eaten. It was a great moment. My favorite scene of the year by far.
Yeah, I agree. Like that, the CGI alone in that scene, you know that they shot the Gollum stuff. Very first thing they shot was the mocap for Gollum. Yeah. So I mean, they spend the entire length of the production honing down the CGI on that, and it is jaw-dropping how good they have gotten to make him look real. I mean, he was real to me in this movie, closest it's ever been. Just incredible detail there. And great work. I think we should mention, though, the SNL parody. Did you see that?
Yes.
Making fun of all the Hobbit titles. It's funny because one of them was called Hobbit 14. Hold on, I left something back at the Shire. Mind if we double back? Yeah. And there's actually, ironically, in the movie, Bilbo, right when he goes on the journey, says, "Hold on." We gotta turn around. I forgot a handkerchief.
Yeah.
Just funny skit. Check that out if you can. But I can see why they're making fun of it because he's stretching it out. But I mean, I would honestly be disappointed if this wasn't a trilogy. You know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That was something I wanted to bring up and see what your opinion was on it. But to me, I've watched those Lord of the Rings movies, the extended editions. I watch them 2 or 3 times a year, the whole thing. It's like 13 or 14 hours,
yeah.
And I love it. So it was a little weird to me that everybody got so up in arms about him stretching this book into 3 movies. I guess the general argument was, the book's only like 230 pages long and you're going to make 3 movies out of it. That's insane.
Great Gatsby. I just finished Great Gatsby because it's coming out.
Yeah.
I read it in probably 3 days and it's about 200 pages.
Right.
So imagine stretching that out into 3 films.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there you go.
Exactly. But my feeling on that was I want him to cover everything. And so if it takes 3 movies to do that, then I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. And to argue the other side of it for just a second, I may have said this before on the podcast. I think I did on the radio, but to me, all the complaints that people had about The Dark Knight Rises last year could have been fixed by turning that into 2 movies.
I can honestly say that's exactly true.
Yeah. And I mean, all like the plot holes and stuff, we could have fixed that, but it would have taken 2 more movies. Well, everybody would have thrown a huge fit if that would have happened. They would have turned into, he's just trying to get as much money as they can. He's trying to milk it for all it's worth and all this. So my argument to that is, if it's going to take 3 movies for Peter Jackson to get out everything of The Hobbit that's there to get out of it, then I want him to take 3 movies, and I'm okay with that.
I agree. Yeah, do whatever you need to tell the story.
Yeah. And I think we can't really personally believe we can't completely judge this movie until you see all 3 parts of it and can really see it as a whole and know here's the beginning, here's the end. Now, what do you think about this one 9-hour movie rather than these 3-hour movies, I mean, I know that's how I feel with Lord of the Rings. I think of Lord of the Rings as one gigantic 13 or 14 hour long movie. And in 2 years, I'll feel the same about The Hobbit. And, I wonder if, I guess my point is, I wonder if the people who gave The Hobbit a bad review or graded it poorly or whatever, I wonder how they'll feel about it as a whole when it's all out there for us all to see rather than just the first third of a very long story.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will come around. I know that happened with The Lord of the Rings. Whenever The Return of the King came out, it turned a lot of people's heads. I mean, the Academy even.
Yeah.
Just saying, wow, as a whole, this thing is great, Yeah. So we got lots to look forward to in this trilogy.
Sure.
Necromancer. It's going to be good. Played by Sherlock Holmes himself, Benedict Cumberbatch. If you didn't know, he was a necromancer and
How
Smaug.
great is that, man? That's going to be awesome.
That's going to be great. Really looking forward to that. What did you think about the Radagast stuff? I don't think you mentioned it.
I thought it was cool, and I expected that part of it coming in. Having read the book a billion times, I expected that the Necromancer and therefore Radagast would be a big part of this trilogy. Then it's not at all a part of the book. Gandalf mentions Radagast and mentions the Necromancer, but that is it. There's nothing about that story in there. And which, if you don't know, I'm sure you know this, but in case you don't or our listener know, the Necromancer is Sauron. That's his earthly personification at this point, and so he turns into Sauron. So that's going to be a huge part of either the second or third movie. But anyway, as far as Radagast was, I thought it was fine. It was a little bit kiddish, and a little bit, maybe even a little bit cheesy. Yeah. But I felt like it fit the narrative pretty well, and that character. I think when you have a character that's that lighthearted and that kind of ridiculous, it almost makes the darkness of the Necromancer, which will be his big nemesis, that much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was a little thrown off by it, to be honest, because I think we got the Radagast scene right directly after the scene where they're slaying the trolls, which was awesome. And I was like, this is great. The trolls are actually talking. I don't think they talked in the original 3.
Sure.
So it was good scene there. So after that, it just turned into like Song of the South, and there's like
yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. Yeah, you're
like
right.
Yeah. There's just birds singing everywhere and like talking to him, and he's like roaming around the woods.
He's just making vaguely racist comments.
You know? Yeah. So I was a little thrown off there, but I can see why it was a good way to introduce the terror of the necromancer. I don't think we got the, and I don't think we got the giant spiders, did we? Other than them crawling all over Radagast's house, I don't think we got a fight with the giant spiders yet, have we?
No, I imagine.
I thought. Because I remember watching it again, I was like, I don't think they do a fight scene with them. No. I might have missed that because I was pretty sure I would have remembered that. But we got that to look forward to. Overall, I'll agree with you. This is a successful film. It accomplishes what it needs to accomplish. It sets up the story in a fun way. It engaged the audience. It brought a lot of kids, a lot of young people to introduce them to Tolkien. And it's already made over $1 billion worldwide. Right. So it's crazy to think that the next 2 movies are pretty much pure profit for the studio.
Right.
They're probably going to make, they're probably spent $1 billion on all 3 of them, producing them and marketing them, probably $1 billion even, I would say, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
But they're going to make 3 or maybe even $4 billion when it's all said and done.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
Well worth it in my opinion, but
well worth it. But we do have to look forward to after this. Peter Jackson's directing the new Tintin sequel, so cool. It'll be good stuff, I'm sure. Any more thoughts on The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, Brian?
No, that's about it. I think I've rambled on enough and
this is one that we'll revisit.
Myself.
We'll revisit this one in December when The Desolation comes out.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. Subscribe and stick around for that if you're interested in Tolkien, because you obviously can tell we are, and you obviously are if you're listening to this podcast. Right. So
and even if you're not, we don't really care. You need to subscribe and listen anyway. I don't feel like we're going to give them a choice.
Really don't have a choice. You have to subscribe.
You're here, so you're stuck. Sorry.
Yeah. Brian, anything you want to mention for movie recommends for the end of the show?
Sure, yeah. I've been pretty busy this last couple of weeks, so I haven't hardly been able to get out to the theater except for the movie that we're going to talk about in our next podcast. But I did rent a movie last week, and that I'll recommend. It's a cartoon or an animated movie called Rise of the Guardians. It came out I think it came out at Thanksgiving last year, and it's based on. I believe it's based on a book, but I could be making that up. The premise is Santa and the Easter Bunny and the Sandman and the Tooth Fairy and Jack Frost team up to stop this bad guy known as crud. Now I'm making myself look dumb.
What's the opposite of Santa?
Dark. It's like the dark or something
Satan?
like that. Shoot. I'm going to vamp. No, they team up to stop this guy who's making all these kids have nightmares. And it's, I didn't see it. Pitch. That's his name. Pitch. Like as in Pitch Black. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, no, it's a kid's movie. Say again?
As in Riddick?
Yeah, exactly.
Pitch Black? No?
Exactly. It's actually just Vin Diesel. They're trying to stop Vin Diesel.
That sounds awesome, actually. Santa versus Vin Diesel.
No, but anyway, it's a kid's movie, but it was really good. I enjoyed it. It's not Pixar quality, but it's a DreamWorks movie, and it's to me it's one of the better DreamWorks movies that I've seen. So. It's got really good voice talent. Chris Pine plays Jack Frost. He's kind of the main character. Alec Baldwin plays like a Russian Santa, and he's pretty great. Jude Law, Hugh Jackman. I mean, it's got a good voice cast, and the narrative and the action are, to me, just right in the right balance of kids are going to enjoy this. It's not going to be too crazy for kids, but it's also entertaining and enjoyable enough for adults. So. Especially if you have a kid that's in that 6 to 12 range or whatever, 6 to 10, I definitely recommend that. But even if you don't, if you're just a creepy old man like me, it's really enjoyable. I had a good time watching it.
Are you surprised it didn't do well? Because
I've read a lot.
I've read a lot in the past couple of weeks about DreamWorks Animation Studios taking a huge hit, and
Yeah.
a lot of people getting let go because of this movie.
Yeah, it took a major loss, and you know what? I am surprised because it's pretty good, and I don't know if it.
They said they're quote unquote reevaluating their entire animation studio after this. So
and so I kind of feel bad for them on that front because I don't know what the budget was. I'm looking to see here. Well, the budget was 150 million, so it's probably a little high, but even still,
they said even though they made money, they're still losing money. I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah,
but
it's decent, and especially in a year when there weren't very many kids movies that were any good. Wreck-It Ralph's great. Other than that, I guess Brave, but I would say Rise of the Guardians was the second.
I was honestly when the Golden Globes, the Oscar nominees got it right, but when the Golden Globe nominations came out and Rise of the Guardians was nominated and Paranorman wasn't, I was a little offended because I'd seen Paranorman, and when I saw it, I was like, "That's a shoo-in for a nomination right there."
Yeah.
So have you seen both? Would you compare it to Paranorman?
I hate Paranorman. That was
you hated it.
I hate it. It's one of my least favorite movies of the year. But I will. Wow. I readily admit it has very.
Let me guess. You didn't see it in 3D.
That's correct. Yeah.
There you go.
I'll say this.
Coraline? Do you like stop motion?
I really don't, and so that's what I was going to say.
I love stop motion.
It has two strikes against it for me because I really don't like stop motion.
If you can see stop motion in 3D, it's literally like clay figures walking around. It looks great.
I tried to get into the stop motion. I just can't do it, but I'm willing to give it a try. I don't get offended.
Mr. Fox? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get offended by anything. The one thing that really bothers me is when people make a kids movie that is not appropriate for kids. Yeah. And Paranorman was Rango was that way too, but Paranorman was just so inappropriate for kids, and I hate that. That really, I mean, I work with kids in my real job, and so I'm sensitive to that. But so I readily admit that there's no way that I could. There was very little chance that I was going to be able to watch Paranorman as it is and come out with a good grade because I definitely. It just. I don't know. Like I said, there's very few things that bother me, and that bothers me a lot. So anyway.
Okay, so if you hated Paranorman, you'll like Rise of the Guardians.
You're right. Yeah, that's about right.
Cool.
No, but it's enjoyable. It's worth seeing. I'm sure it'll show up on Netflix or something before too long. But it's a decent little movie, and in a year where there wasn't a whole lot of kids entertainment, it's up there as one of the better ones. So I recommend.
My weekly recommend this week, I'm going to take a note out of the Richard Barden manual.
The late, great Richard Barden.
Yeah, I just actually finished his obituary that I'll be submitting to the paper after we finish recording this. But
yeah, we didn't tell the whole truth. Just we want to keep it clean for the papers.
You're right. I'm going to take a note out of his. I'm going to recommend a book.
All right.
I've been on break, and I was in the mountains doing a little skiing, and it's good to always relax up there and to catch in a book or catch up on books. So I found one on Kindle called John Carter and the Gods of Hollywood, and it's basically about why John Carter as a movie didn't work. And Brian, what are your thoughts on John Carter as a movie? Why do you think it didn't work?
That's a very interesting topic. I'm glad you brought that up. I actually wrote a blog about that either the week before or the week after it came out last year, and just talked about what a mess the production had been just from the get-go. So I'm interested to read that book and see what they have to say that I don't know about. But the budget was a problem to begin with. Hiring a director who didn't know really how to make a movie outside of the Pixar system. I think Andrew Stanton's going to make a very good movie at some point, but Pixar does things in such a different way than anybody else, and having him be in charge of a $200 or $250 million movie right off the bat was probably a bad idea. And Disney made a huge mistake in terms of marketing the movie, just in simple things like the branding of calling it John Carter instead of John Carter of Mars, because they felt like Mars alienated the average movie-going audience. But at the same time, by taking away the title that everybody who's a fan of sci-fi writing, they took away a title that they had familiarity with, and it kind of alienated the fanboys, which is what you need the most to get a movie like that off the ground. Have you ever read any of the books, the John Carter book?
I haven't read the books, no. Wasn't that familiar with it before I saw the movie. I've gone back and researched more of the stories because it's really interesting premise. And the book talks a lot about part of the reason they think it didn't work is because so much of the John Carter story has been just raped by other stories. I mean,
sure.
George Lucas, there's a whole chapter in the book that talks about all the stuff Star Wars took from John Carter. Even the names. Certain
Avatar
scenes,
does too.
And Avatar, yeah.
Big
certain scenes in particular, the scene in Attack of the Clones, the Colosseum scene, ripped basically verbatim from John Carter.
Yeah.
And so when people see the trailer for John Carter, they're like, wow, that's just a ripoff of the Star Wars prequels. You know what I mean? That's what it looks like to me. But it's actually vice versa, is that George Lucas ripped it from Edgar Rice Burroughs. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the book that talks about why people were turned off to the film, why it didn't work. It's really cool so far.
That's interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out. I like books like that about I don't read hardly any books about Hollywood or about actors or anything like that, but the ones that interest me are the books that are about specific movies, the behind the scenes issues and things like that. I've read several books on that phenomenon, and I think it's fascinating. Yeah. So that's a great pick. I'm excited to check that out.
It's a good book. I recommend it. The author is Michael D. Sellers, Sellers. So check that out. I think I got it for $3 on Amazon for Kindle. So definitely buy it. It does a great job shedding light on why it didn't work and why the rights have been passed around from studio to studio.
Yeah.
I think in the 90s they were trying to do it, and Tom Cruise was attached. There's so many stories in there about that. So definitely check it out.
Have you seen John Carter?
I have. I rewatched it, I think, over the weekend because I had started reading the book, and I was like, I hadn't seen it since it was in the theater, so I felt like I needed to revisit it. And I'm looking forward to finishing the book because I can honestly say I don't know why it didn't really work either. Compared to what does work nowadays, you would think that it would have done better than it did.
I was gonna say I would encourage our listeners to watch John Carter and give it a shot. It's one of those movies that I think it just got bashed so hard before it ever even saw the light of day that there was no way it was gonna succeed.
It was dead in the water.
Yeah, but I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's on Netflix Instant.
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe I'm lying and I saw that come across on the. Anyway, it's worth checking out. It's not a bad movie at all. I gave it a B or a B+ or something. But I enjoy it, and it's a decent little sci-fi movie that people didn't really give a chance. So if you haven't seen it, it's certainly not a horrible movie. You can definitely do worse things with your 2 hours. So
totally agree. Well, Brian, it's been good. Thanks for talking about The Hobbit. I know we could have gone probably 8 hours on The Hobbit.
Oh yeah,
and we will someday. So stick around for that. Well, until next week, we will see you guys at the cinema.
Goodbye.